November 20th, 1963. 2 days before the world changed forever. On a dark stretch of Highway 190 near Eunice, Louisiana, a car slows down just enough for the passenger door to fly open. A woman is shoved out into the dirt. She is bruised, disoriented, and terrified. Her name is Rose Cheramie. When the police find her, they assume she is just another victim of a local dispute or perhaps a drifter caught in the wrong crowd. They take her to the East Louisiana State Hospital. To the doctors there, Rose appears to be suffering from severe narcotic withdrawal. Her body is shaking, her eyes are wild. But amidst the tremors and the pain, Rose Cheramie begins to speak. And what she says is not the rambling of a junkie. It is a detailed, cold-blooded prophecy. She tells the doctors that she has just come from Florida with 2 men she describes as Italian-looking or Latin. She tells them they're heading to Dallas, and then she drops the bombshell that should have stopped time itself. She looks at the medical staff and says, with absolute certainty, that President John F. Kennedy is going to be killed in Dallas in 48 hours. The doctors, focused on her clinical state, dismiss her. They see a woman in the throes of addiction, a troubled soul making wild claims to get attention. They record her statements as delusional. They didn't know that Rose Cheramie had just spent the last few days in a car with the very men who were mapping out the kill zone. Did you catch that? 2 full days before the first shot was fired in Dealey Plaza, a woman in a Louisiana hospital bed had already named the city, the target, and the date. As the hours ticked by toward November 22nd, Rose's delusions only grew more specific. She didn't just talk about a murder. She talked about a business. She told Lieutenant Francis Fruge of the Louisiana State Police that she worked for a man named Jack Ruby. At the time, that name meant nothing to the authorities in Eunice. Just a small-time club owner in Dallas, Rose explained that the 2 men she was traveling with were part of a large-scale heroin shipment. She knew the routes, the contacts, and the prices. She claimed the assassination was a secondary necessity to protect a much larger operation involving organized crime and intelligence assets. She begged them to listen. She warned them that the president was walking into a trap that had been set weeks in advance. Then, the world stopped. At 12:30 p.m. on Friday, November 22nd, the news flashed across the hospital television. The president was dead. In Dallas, exactly as Rose had said. The atmosphere in that hospital room shifted from condescension to pure, unadulterated horror. The doctors who had laughed at her withdrawal hallucinations now looked at her with trembling hands. Rose Cheramie wasn't crazy. She was a witness to the greatest crime of the century before it even happened. Lieutenant Fruge rushed back to question her. This time, he brought a notebook. Rose was no longer shaking from withdrawal. She was calm. She gave him more names. She told him that Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby had been seen together at Ruby's club for years. She described the underground of Dallas with the precision of an insider. But as Rose began to outline the connection between the heroin trade and the shooters, the walls began to close in. The information was too dangerous. The prophecy was too accurate. If you are finding these dossiers essential to uncovering the truth, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't give it to them. To understand why Rose Cheramie had to be silenced, you have to understand where she came from. She wasn't just a drifter who happened to overhear a conversation. Rose was an employee at the Carousel Club in Dallas, the neon-lit underworld hub, owned by Jack Ruby. According to her statements to Lieutenant Fruge, she didn't just know Ruby. She knew his associates. She claimed She had seen Lee Harvey Oswald at the club on multiple occasions, sitting in the dark corners with men who didn't exist on any official manifest. Rose was the bridge between two worlds: the high-stakes heroin trade and the low-level street thugs used for the dirty work of intelligence agencies. She explained that the two men who threw her out of the car were part of a drug-running operation that utilized CIA-linked airfields in Louisiana and Florida. The heroin wasn't just for profit. It was a black-budget currency used to fund anti-Castro paramilitary groups. Rose knew the names of the pilots, the tail numbers of the planes, and the specific Dallas trip scheduled for late November. When Fruge contacted the FBI after the assassination, he expected a massive task force to descend on Louisiana. Instead, he met a wall of silence. The Bureau's reports on Rose Cheramie are a masterclass in character assassination. They focused on her drug history to invalidate her testimony, completely ignoring that her hallucinations had predicted the most significant political murder in American history with 100% accuracy. But Frug couldn't let it go. He had seen the terror in her eyes. He knew that Rose was a living piece of evidence that proved the conspiracy wasn't just possible. It was documented 48 hours before it happened. By 1965, the official narrative of the lone nut was beginning to crumble. In New Orleans, District Attorney Jim Garrison was quietly building the only legal case ever brought for the conspiracy to kill the president. Garrison's investigators began looking for the woman from the East Louisiana State Hospital. They needed Rose Cheramie, but the people Rose had warned about were always one step ahead. On the night of September 4th, 1965, Rose was walking along Highway 190 near Gladwater, Texas. It was a clear night on a perfectly straight stretch of road. Just like the night in 1963 when she was first found, a car approached from behind. She was found dead the next morning. The official cause of death: hit and run. But the details didn't fit. The driver of the car was never found. The autopsy reports showed massive head trauma that some investigators believed was inconsistent with a vehicle impact. It looked more like a professional execution. Most chilling of all, her medical records from her stay in 1963, the ones that recorded her delusions about the assassination, had mysteriously vanished from the state hospital files. Rose Cheramie was the impossible witness. She was the woman who knew too much, too early. And in a world of state-sponsored secrets, that is a death sentence. Think about what I just said. They didn't just kill a president. They spent the next 2 years hunting down every person who could prove they did it. Rose was just the first name on a very long list. The question isn't whether she was telling the truth. The question is, who was the driver on Highway 190 that night?